I am Benoy Joseph, Faculty of Social Science, Silver Hills Higher Secondary School. Second session of the chapter Economic System and Economic Policy of 9th Standard. Now, in this, we are going to explain about the changes happened in Indian economy after 1991. Now, currently the private sector is engaged in many activities and public sector having its own limitations. Almost all countries, in the order to achieve economic growth, government are willing to take certain measures to welcome private entrepreneurs and to attract foreign investors. As a result of these economic policies, there have been a large-scale transfer of capital, goods, services, technology and other things. Now, what happened before 1991 and after 1991, that we are going to discuss here. Now, we already know that at that period, before 1991, we had a system of calling one to other with a telephone. Before that, we having other means, dialed one. Then after some times, it's changed into some other devices. Then to the mobile devices, which is really huge like Alcatel. Then it be lighter and most useful. And nowadays we having iPhone with having a variety of different handsets. From here to here, there is a paradigm shift of telecommunication. It's happened because of the shift of the policy from 1991 towards a new economical policies. Let us see, through the India used to maintain a strong public sector and controlled foreign trade of late, the economic policies have undergone a change. Measures to attract foreign capital and to strengthen foreign trade have been taken. The measures which started officially in 1991 resulted in liberalization, privatization and globalization. We are going to discuss about each and every these points in detail in this session. Now, let us analyze each of one by, first we will start with liberalization. Now, what is meant by liberalization? The relaxation of government control and influence over the economy and its activity in a country. The process of liberalization was started in India in 1985. It started in 1985. Now, what is meant by liberalization? Relaxation of rules and regulations and the policy decision. We call it as liberalization. Now, what are the important things mentioned? Mentioned below are the changes happen after taking the liberalization policy. The first thing is relaxation of the control in setting up of industries. There are a lot of red tapeism and delay in the process. It's been relaxed. Reduction of import tariff and taxes. It was a major hurdles when we are talking about import and export taxes. Changes in foreign exchange rules like FEMA, permission of foreign investors in many sectors. The government gave more players to play in a level field, reduced the role of government in basic structures. These entire things, what we called it as liberalization. Now, apart from this, government intervention in some sectors has declined as a part of liberalization. That policy we called it as liberalization. Now, according to this, there is a foreign exchange crisis happened in 1991. Before that it started due to certain war in Kuwait and even European market down. These all crises led towards India's 1991 foreign policy. It led towards India's foreign economic policy and its changes. Now, the second part of it, privatization. The second policy decision made by the government, what we call it as privatization. Now, what is meant by privatization? In India, many public sector enterprise has been privatized since 1991. Their share of many public sector enterprise was sold off. This process we call it as privatization. Selling off the ownership shares to a private individuals or groups by the government, by their public sector, what we called it as privatization. Example, we having a food shortage, that is why we created a modern food industry. They are having around more than 450 outlets and companies being part of it. After the liberalization policy, after the privatization policy, the government hand over these public sector bread making units to private enterprise like Unilever. Some other examples like Maruti, it's been controlled and coordinated by the government. Public sector enterprise is being given to the Suzuki. This policy we called it as privatization. The private sector has been given access to several areas which were early under the control of the government. The presence of private sector can be actively felt in road, electricity, communication, basic industries, etc. Now, this method is being adopted by two means when we call it as BOT, build, operate and transfer, and the second one is PPP, public-private partnership. Now, what is meant by BOT? An individual can build a road or a bridge, he can operate it, he can levy tolls, and afterwards it's been transferred for a particular period. For example, 20 years they can use it and collect amount what they are being incurred inside that project, and after that they had to transfer this project to government. That is, we called it as BOT. Now, the second thing is PPP, public-private partnership. Then a gallant example is our Kochi airport and certain highways. Have you seen the toll being collected from vehicles traveling along the main roads? Who collected them and why? This process we called it as the BOT. Now, the second thing is that a gallant example of PPP, public-private partnership, Kochi airport, where the private sector and the public sector are being joined together and making this Kochi International Airport possible. Now, when we are talking about the third constituent of this policy, what we call it as globalization. Opening up of our market to the world market. Before that, we are being closed. We are not having that much import and export, and we are protecting our market from foreign players. But after 1991, we open up our market to the foreign products. That policy, what we called it as globalization. Now, we'll see. Thus, globalization is the economic integration and interdependence of nations as a result of free flow of capital, labor, goods and services, and exchange of technology irrespective of boundaries. This we called it as globalization. Now, towards the end of the 20th century, development in computer, mobile phones, internet, etc. help in improving communication. Container ships, flights, bullet trains, and the fast means of transportation, these all things accelerated globalization. But there are certain problems. The new economic policy which completely disregard government control are known as neoliberalism. It created, this globalization created neoliberalization, where major players were the individuals or groups and the public sector being kept aloof. Now, which are the important agencies? Which are the important agencies which are accelerated this globalization? The first among is the WTO, World Trade Organization. Efforts were made to find way to do away with the restrictions in the world trade. These efforts strengthened with the establishment of World Trade Organization. Headquarters in Geneva on 1st January 1995. India was a founder member of WTO. There are around 161 members nowadays. Now, what are the main guidelines of the trade agreements formed through the WTO? Main guidelines of the trade agreements formed through the World Trade Organization as follows: pace by pace reduction of import duty, reduction of subsidies, modification of patent laws, telecommunication and other banking sectors giving more promotion and predominance, extension of the consideration given to domestic investment, foreign investment, giving more importance to foreign investment. Now, when we are talking about subsidies, the government giving an amount. For example, we already heard about the subsidies in the LPG. The actual cost is more than 1,000 rupees, but we are getting the LPG cylinder for around 800 rupees. Around 200 to 300 rupees are being paid by government. This 300 rupees, what we called it as subsidy. According to WTO, we had to reduce these subsidies. The second thing is the patent. Now, for example, I am constructing a product. I am making a product and I am taking the patent. That is my sole responsibility and my sole thing. It's only for me to make these products. Nobody else can use the technology for producing the same product. That we called it as patent. Now, the second important thing which accelerated globalization is the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. They also played an important role in formation of international markets and international trade. Now, when we are talking about patent, rights granted for the protection of the invention of new technology, products and the production methods for a specific period is termed as patent. It's a sole authority of the person who is inventing the product. It's a right being protected by the governments. Now, the foremost thing which who being distributed and functioning these all things, what we call it as multinationals. Now, what is meant by multinationals? The company which is operating in its home country or the mother country, it's been operating in its mother country and it had different branches in other countries. These type of companies, what we called it as multinational companies. Not only they having their production in their mother country. For example, Tata having production in India, but they are also having the firms, the organization in UK, America and other nations. These types of companies, what we called it as multinational companies. When we are talking about multinational company, India we can call it as Tata. When we are talking about foreign nations, international multinationals like Apple, Samsung, These companies, what we call it as multinational companies. Now, how are multinational companies different from other companies? It's been two stages. It's been two stages while they have been operating. The first stage is multinational companies mostly start their production by merging with our or acquiring domestic companies Example, Maruti. Maruti is already there in India. They are producing small cars, and Suzuki is being from Japan, and they merged with Maruti and producing Maruti Suzuki. The second one is the multinational companies hand over their production to the small scale entrepreneurs. The goods and services produced by them being sold by their brand name. For example, there are certain shoe companies which are being produced in China, but actually when it is being exported, it's been given their own brand names. These are the two methods they are adopting in multinational companies. Now here we can see the made in Thailand, made in China, made in India likewise. Now these concepts like the new economic policy concepts are led towards what we call it as neo-liberalization, new liberalizations. Now what are the important things happen because of this? The major thing happened, it's the policy of what we call it as marketization. Everything for the market. As a result of new economic policies, the market have now become free, extensive and strong, and they're having the tendency to get more and more profit. Now, when we are talking about the nutshell of this chapter, what are the arguments in favor and against these policies? In favor and against these policies. There have been many arguments for and against new economic policy. Let us take an example. Argument in favor of the new policy. Availability of wide variety of products. There are many products we can get. Second one, ability to use the most advanced technology. We are getting advanced technology. Let us see 40 years or 50 years before, we are not having to dream about Apple phone technology in India. That is why when globalization happened, it's been termed as technological transfer. Now the third one is fall in price due to increased competition. If it is more product, there will be more competition and the price will be reduced. Increase in export. Entry of companies into foreign trade. Indian companies being in the foreign trade. More employment opportunity due to establishment of new enterprises. More and more job opportunities. Increase in national income. These are the favoring things when we are talking about globalization. Let us see the argument against new economic policies. Increase in economic disparity, the haves and have-nots. It will be a big difference between those persons having the wealth and those who are not having the wealth. Excess exploitation of natural resources. Import leads to fall in price of the domestic products. Domestic products prices might be dipped. They are getting less profit. Government lose control over economic system because everything is being produced, distributed by the private people, and these people dictate the government in their policy decisions. And the last, not the least, job security might be declined and it will be making chaos in the mother country. Now, let us assess these things. Why is the capitalist economy known as the market economy? List the action taken by the government of India, a part of liberalization. Make a note on the working of multinational companies. Do you support globalization policies? Why? And there are certain extended activity, you can go through the textbook. This is all about this session. This is all about the session. Thank you.